Atheism versus religion. Who will be the winner? We've finally solved the age-old debate of, is it atheism, the scientific material model, where everything is measured in exact thing, or is it religion, where we can feel the deep impulse to connect with God and to connect with some sort of spirit? I just try to start them real quick and intense like that so that it might be slightly interesting to people for those first 30 seconds. I This came up because I had a friend message me, a good friend too, an old friend from the past, and he said, "Josh, I have some friends that were having a debate, and he was staunchly atheist, and another friend was staunchly religious, and he's like, I couldn't help but notice that both seemed to be fairly limited in their viewpoint and so certain that their truth was the truth, that it wasn't actually much of a conversation. It felt like two people kind of just butting their heads up against each other. Back in the day, I remember watching debates on atheism versus Christianity, and I'd see like the priest, and he'd be standing up there, and he had this little weird little white thing, and the atheist who was always kind of like a scientific-y, nerdy looking fella, and they would debate for hours, like hours and hours and hours would go by, debating whether religion or the scientific method is the correct one. Hey, Lena, I can touch people's comments to make them come up. And I remember watching them and just being like, this is the boringest shit I've ever seen in my fucking life. Literally, it's like a person who has invested themselves so heavily and dogmatically into a book written so long ago and skewed so many times, and just like very, very sure that their religion was correct. And then it was this like pompous atheist type that looked like it almost looked like he was like, "Oh, look how much better I am than you because I know the truth and you." And it was just like both sides were just so boring, like boring, boring, boring. I can't imagine a more boring hundreds of year old ideological battle than atheism versus religion. Fuck that. It's the same points over and over again. There's really nothing new. Oh, by the way, I've got two green dots on my face. This is because our elf on the shelf drew on me last night. Um, yeah, just boring fucking shit. And I didn't realize why I thought it was so boring until I came across the map Spiral Dynamics. Um, Spiral dynamics is basically the basis of any work that I do. It's called integral or integrated thinking, and it involves an understanding that most people that we meet are going to be so solid in their mindset about, there's the different things in spiral dynamics is religion, atheism, and like activist hippie stuff, is that if you meet people that are religious, if you meet people that are scientific atheist, if you meet people that are hippie green activist types, there's one thing that actually they all share in common. And you wouldn't think that because, again, all of the ideologies and all of the things that they're talking about are so different from each other. But the one thing that each of those pods of consciousness carry is that each of them thinks that their way is right and everyone else is wrong. And watching a debate again between an atheist and a religious person, it's like, because they're not even listening to each other, because they both have such strong and intense feelings about what's going on and such strong studied mindsets, it's like it's predictable as fuck. So if you ever go to watch an atheist versus religion, or it started to become atheist versus spirituality, whatever it is, if you watch those debates, it's just the same shit over and over and over and over again. And again, the person, the atheist, is like, yeah, Paul, look how smart I am. I'm so much smarter than you, but you're literally like bullying someone who is, I hate to put it this way, but dumb enough to get dogmatically into a groupthink consciousness around religion. So it's like even the pompousness of being like, yes, I'm so smart and you religious people are so dumb. It's like, to me, that's almost like, it almost looks just as bratty, if that makes sense. Um, and this was also spurred, this idea, because when I was at a meditation a few days ago, I did write about this. We were doing metta, which is getting into our love and our unlimited, unconditional love and forgiveness for other people. And during the meditation, my good friend Roger, who was leading it, was able to be like, yeah, that is a really good principle, because in Buddhism, that's taken as one of the highest principles, is metta, unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness. If someone fucks you over, forgive them anyway. If someone tries to fuck with you, don't even think about it. Just be like, oh, that's fine. I have so much love in my heart for who you are that I don't actually even really care that you've hurt me or whatever. And the point, though, was that Roger very eloquently said that is an amazing teaching, especially if you've lived your life holding grudges, unable to forgive, unable to find love that isn't conditional. So, in other words, like, if you do this for me, then that's why I love you. But if you look at unconditional love, it's like, I love you universally, no matter what you do. Before you even have done, I love you. After you have done, I love you. It's a very deep teaching. But my friend Roger was able to point out that there's limits to that. Because if you are unconditionally forgiving people that are abusing you or hurting you or fucking you over in any way, that in itself is a perversion of what those teachings are meant to be. And yet, those teachings are more common, not just with Buddhism, like with any religion, with anything, the idea of love and forgiveness, that's great. And again, super applicable, because when I'm going through a healing process, um, being able to find forgiveness is often the last point of that healing, gone through all the other points, and then finally forgiveness. But in these beautiful teachings in Buddhism or in Christianity or in Sufism or any other form of religion, there's also limitations. So you can say, yes, definitely forgive people unless they're not trustworthy, and it's actually time to say fuck you and put up good boundaries. Um, so that's how this whole thing came up, was that we were studying metta and how beautiful and impactful and important those teachings are, but also that if we are to let that go completely wild, and then we don't have discernment or judgment or healthy boundaries or an ability to protect ourselves, that same teaching can turn into an issue. Then again, my friend messaged me to say that this atheist and religious debate was happening, and he was like, yeah, I don't really see this as even being fruitful or helpful. It seems like and I was just like, it's not. So, anyways, that inspired this whole talk, and this is also true of green environmental and political movements, is that if we see ourselves as having the 100% right answer and everyone else as being wrong, then we're going to come at it with a kind of a shit mindset. And the potential for open-hearted debate or a sharing of multiple perspectives that could be integrated into something functional is out the window, because it's also dualistic. My way is right, what your way is wrong. Doesn't matter. The truth is, when we get heavily into debates and dualistic intensities like this, with the idea that you're 100% right and I'm 100% wrong, then we're missing out on, let's say, the 30% wiggle room that exists in any ideology, the 30% wiggle room that exists in any mindset. Where there's wiggle room, it's not 100%. Life is not, you can't capture. The whole point of Buddhist teachings is that you cannot capture reality with our mind. Like, there's no way that we can, using our mind, capture the totality of reality. It's impossible. But with ideologies, it feels that way, especially when we have friends and groups that are all feeling these ideologies together. When we have these strong group thinks and these strong philosophies and these strong, I'm 100% right, everyone else is 100% wrong, when we get really into that, it's kind of impossible for actual integration of perspectives to even exist. And I would say that most people, in the world are in these mindsets, or in these groups of people with these mindsets. So it is important. I do see a cool comment here, so I'm going to bring it up. Lena says, my son is atheist. I've searched for what other gods there might be my whole life, so that was a bit difficult at first. He actually waited a couple years before telling me, because I was such a dang hippie, he didn't want to hurt me. He speaks openly about his atheism, and it's been really interesting, eye-opening, and I'm still a hippie, but more grounded now. Well, the truth is, again, if we're our children are probably going to be the ones that are going to help us open up the most. And what it sounds to me, because you said I'm still a hippie, but just more grounded now. It sounds like you have allowed Jimmy's perspective, your son's perspective, to come into you so you can feel what the point is to that atheism, because the point of atheism is actually fucking great. If we were to take it for what it is, it's stripping away superstition. And, you know, do you remember growing up, Lena? People were very superstitious. Wives' tales, they were called, were told about everything, even the way you cook certain things, or the way that you just little, like, you gotta step to the left 3 times and then do the tingle before the, like everyone was living in very strong superstitious mindsets. So atheism came, in my opinion, as the perfect answer to stripping away superstition. However, then if it thinks that that's the end of its line, like, okay, that's true, there's nothing, what dare I say, magical, mystical, or interesting in this world, we can just dull it all, flatten it all, and come into some sort of solid belief that there is nothing interesting in this world and there is nothing meaningful. But it's a belief just like any other, right? A belief in no belief is a belief indeed. So but what Lena's pointing out is that she's able to take the gold from atheism and combine it, integrate it with her perspectives of spirituality and her hippie ways. So yeah, in my opinion, if we can find integral thinking, and that's something that I spend an awful lot of time doing, to be honest, is finding out where do these mindsets intersect, where's the gray zones, and where's the hard zones? The hard, absolutely not. This is exactly, if you're an atheist, you have to kind of believe this. If you're a Christian, you have to believe this. Where are those points, those dogmatic points? Where's the flexible room? And where's the integration points? Because oftentimes there's more integration points than one would think. These things actually, because here's a good example is, what if a person did have a sense of a love, an unconditional love in their heart that perhaps a man named Jesus felt in his heart, and then you're able to be like, well, that guy did it, I can do it. So we can feel that unconditional love. What if we combined that with a lack of superstition, so that we didn't look at everything as though it was like, oh my God, God's coming to get me here, and the spirits are coming to get me here. Like, what if we could axe that part, but still access that unconditional love that Jesus would have presented, that man Jesus would have embodied, that connection to God? We can have that. We can strip away all the bullshit superstition. We can see things pluralistically and with the green kind of hippie mentality. But also remember that if, for example, we get into that green hippie mentality and then we look at every single other person on earth and be like, you're all wrong. If you're not a hippie and if you're not supporting my environmental movement or the environmental movement, then you're wrong and you're wrong and you're wrong and you're wrong. What it ends up being is the exact same game. So now how do we incorporate the fact that obviously massive change needs to be happened on this earth, and specifically in that green movementy kind of way, combining that with stripping away superstition? Well, fuck, that would actually be super helpful to the green if we could strip away some of the erroneous ideas. And then also combining it with religious structures where we can find unconditional love through Jesus Christ or through teachings of Mata, being able to find those beautiful spiritual principles, strip away the ridiculous superstitions that keep us locked in these boxes, and then also have these beautiful understandings that we can see things from different perspectives and want to help the earth and want to help the people of the earth be free. Those can all exist as one, rather than needing to strip them out and fire off dualistically at each other. If we can find integration points, then there's lovely things to be had through all points. However, that's not the way we've grown up. That's not the way our society has been driven for millennia. We have often thought that in order to support one thing, we have to lack support for another thing. My support over here is my lack of support in its opposite. Those mindsets will continually keep us in loops. They will keep us societally in conflict, erroneous conflict and loops. And in order to move forward on the spiral, learning how to integrate and understand where people are coming from, feel empathy where people are coming from, but not buy into their bullshit or not buy into their way of thinking as though that is indeed the truth over all else. Being able to find integration points, being able to find the gold, dare I say, in each of those mindsets, as well as the limitations and the blocks that they create. If we can do all of those things at once, then we will be integration. I don't know what the word is. I was going to say integration specialist because I've heard that, but Jody says that those people are super annoying. So not that, but the ability to see things from multiple perspectives and not be a cunt about it um, is a pretty huge and lovely thing to do. It's 15 minutes in. I'm going to go. Lots of love.